All right, here's a Promaster. It's a high roof extended Promaster that was built out by someone. Clients have had it for a few years and now they want to remodel it. So this is a couple, and they do a fair amount of traveling. They found that they aren't using the shower, and they'd rather have a dinette here. Keep the closet, remove the shower, remove this drawer bank, dinette with storage under each seat, a table, and upper cabinets above. So I'm excited for this project. I don't usually do partial builds like this. I'm mostly off-grid power systems, plumbing systems, HVAC systems, but every now and again I like to keep my skill set up, and also I've never really done a remodel like this. I've put in showers but not taken them out. And people do that because it takes up a lot of space. And it's a very small shower, depending on the type of camping that you do. If you're at campgrounds a lot, or if you're just staying in urban areas or staying at someone's house, you're not going to use the shower in the van. You're going to use it at the facility. Plus, where are you going to sit in here? I mean, I guess you have benches in the back, which means you have to take down and make up your bed every day, which if you've done any amount of long-term travel in a van, you know that is a major pain. And so they're just going to make this be a permanent bed. The mattress is removed so that I can get in here and do some work. There's going to be a little bit of plumbing involved, mostly capping off and removing the shower lines. There's going to be some electrical involved because we're going to have to take out some circuitry, maybe extend some circuitry, relocate some circuitry. The carpentry involved is going to be, well, repaneling the wall and the ceiling. As you can see, the builder didn't run this stuff full length. They stopped it right at this wall. So I'll have to get some matching shiplap, and then a little bit of, building of some benches, just with some plywood and then some paint, which I hate painting, but it'll be simple and it'll be white, and I can do it. Now in the back here, we have plumbing on one side. It's a massive bench, holy moly. There's our water tank. This is just a square stock tank. So it's not, they could have used a wheel well tank. I guess it doesn't save a whole lot of space. And then there's this other weird tank here that goes to the air conditioner, which this is by Fresh Air. This is not actually an air conditioner with a compressor. I think somebody called it a swamp cooler, which I'm not too familiar with, but I know that the client seems to like it. We do have a hot water in here. The client wants to add a little shower port towards the back so that they can, shower off outside. Again, once you use your van and you know what you need, Here's the power system over here. Massive waste of space, but I guess if you're matching benches for this type of setup, then it makes sense. 400 amp hours of Battleborn. We have our Multi-Plus over here, an Orion DC-DC charger. It does have a servo system, MPPT, smart shunt. I mean, it looks put together fairly well. Cabling seems to be the right size. Chafe protection seems to be, a little funky, but adequate. I will be, jumping in to make some updates on this touchscreen, and this whole control panel is kind of janky. I'd love to upgrade this a little bit for them. Power's not currently on, but I will power that on eventually. Some rustic uppers, 3/4 construction with a 1/2-inch door. So I did take a look at this project before I started it, just to make sure that I could match the quality. I mean, again, I've built a lot of vans, and I know what I'm capable of in my small shop versus, professional shop, something like this, which is just rough cut plywood with no lamination or, CNC routing. Definitely something I can reproduce. All right, so I'm going to put the camera down and we're going to jump into demo and see how far we can get today. Client is going to come by tomorrow, take a look, and go over a few design options. All right, got the whole drawer bank out. I also realized I have an extra zoom function on my camera here, so we can fit a lot more in the screen. Got some nice pieces of 3/4 inch plywood that I may or may not use. I'll probably use some of this 1/2 inch stuff on some of the uppers if it's decent and straight. There's our Webasto. You can see we just have a plywood subfloor. There's the wall. The wall insulation is Havelock wool, and then they use some of this foil stuff with some foil tape, so it's completely sealed, like vapor barrier style, which I don't know. I've never been a fan of sealing cavities in the wall in case there's condensation in there. I want it to breathe a little bit. Yeah, we have this framing that we'll use to attach our shiplap to. I really think I'm just gonna probably rip all of this out all the way up until here, and then buy shiplap boards that are longer and, I don't know, stagger the seams. I guess on the walls it will butt into the closet, so that saves me. I guess it butts into the closet in all locations, so that's going to be the answer right there. So I'll just buy shiplap that's long enough, and I say, an 8-footer. If they have 6-footers, I'll maybe can fit that in. But yeah, the shower, I mean, the Nautilus store, if you've ever installed one of these, they install with like sticky tape over here and over here. I'll probably just start getting in. I want to take the Nautilus store out without damaging it. But other than that, I might have to break out the old Sawzall or sledgehammer to get the rest of this apart. I see a few screws here. Feels like there's a shower, like a whole shower pan in there, which would be something I couldn't break apart and would be usable in another van. So I have to do a little bit of investigation. I'll probably take my pry bar and pull off some of this stuff here. This is the fun part. Okay, so not a shower pan. I was just seeing this metal, I don't even really know what you call this stuff, but I know that you can use it to build. It's basically a metal 2x4. And it's, I mean, great, I guess, in this application. I've never used that to build. It's lightweight, it's metal, so it doesn't hold moisture, but I guess it could rust out if there is some leaking or moisture buildup. It's also very thick. Like, we didn't need to have this big cavity in between the shower and the wall. Like, it's just unnecessary. You just use a single piece of 3/4, which there's another piece of material here that I don't know about. It's like, it looks foam. It's got a textured back to it. Probably something, used in a residential application. And then this Palisade panel is glued to that. So that whole wall will come out in one piece. I just have to take this metal wall apart. All right, I'm gonna stop and take a quick shot so everybody can see the carnage that is this metal framing. This stuff is an absolute nightmare to take apart. Every one of these little self-tapping screws is extremely tough. You can't just rip it, crack it, break it like you would wood material. And they used a ton. So I'm using some snips to kind of cut pieces, but all of this stuff is so interconnected. I'm sweating bullets. It's a hot, humid day here in Pennsylvania. All right, here's the end of the demo. So got everything cleaned up. It's a bunch of adhesive where the shower pan was. So I'll have to scrape that up. One thing I didn't think about was the gray water connection. So I'll definitely be going down there to cap off some PVC. Again, I think I'm gonna hopefully take these PEX lines and cap them off. Hopefully it's in that bench. But right now it's got stuff on it. And then I was able to preserve most of this. There's a lot of screws sticking out, so I could grind them off and putty all of this, which I would like to. I could also just take a vice grip and bend them and break them off, and hopefully they, they break off clean. Here we are under this Promaster, so we can figure out what we're going to do with this drain. So we have a P-trap here. Everything's kind of wrapped in this heat foil, which is great because it's really close to the exhaust. And it's probably dropped a little bit, since I took that pipe out, that drain pipe. But again, you'd have to winterize this every time. If you use the HEPVO, you wouldn't have to worry about that. And this pipe goes into this stock tank over here. And by stock, I mean it's just a square tank. They probably got this from Class A Customs. It's got an electronic drain on it. It's held up with some perforated, strapping, which is, something I've done in the past. But it does have this other little tank over here, which I'm guessing is for the sink. And then they join the two tanks together just to, add capacity. But what we're gonna do here is I'm just gonna cut this pipe, and then I'm gonna spin out the tube and the fitting, and then just put a cap in there. Ta-da! All right, one thing I gotta do before I take those lines out is drain this tank. You can see it's almost halfway full. So looking at our tank, there's just a drain right here, a little valvey. Open the valvey. And there we go. All right, just taking off the mixer. Definitely still pressure in the lines, even though the tank is drained, obviously. And these are standing with water, so I have to drain them out somehow. When I do my plumbing systems, I always have a drain at the low point in the lines. And I don't think there is something like that here. Okay, starting to panel out this wall, and I hit this hurdle, right, that every Promaster owner hits or builder hits. Right, this, I don't know, this pillar right here has these various bumps sticking out of it. And up here, like this plane is all straight. So my panel, my shiplap just goes right over that, no problem. But down here, it sticks out a good 3/4 of an inch is what I'm finding. And so in the past, I've seen people take a planer and plane out the back of the board, cut it out and just cover it with fabric, and then you have like this weird fabric island in the middle of your paneling. And my seat base is going to end like right about here, so it covers most of it but not all of it. But I have another bump all the way up there, and I want this to be easy, and because this wall is isolated from the rest of the van, what I'm going to do is rip some 3/4 inch strips of plywood and just build this wall out a little bit to take up that extra bump. And then I'll be able to just slap my paneling and go all the way up. All right, I am moving right along. This is the fun part, putting up this siding, just scribing my edge as I go along, making sure my electrical is taken care of, my heater wires. This is a little wire for the Laveo dry flush toilet. Got my outlets moved over a little bit so they're more centered on the wall. This is going to be a light for the upper cabinet, which is probably going to pop out in the wall somewhere around there. And the next hurdle is I'm going to start working from the ceiling down so I know how this corner is all going to match up. And this board here, you can see it was notched around the shower. And so I decided to cut it, and then I'm going to run a full length board to this edge. Now I took my little Ingersoll Rand reciprocating saw and use that to cut there, and then yeah, I'll have to do some putty. You can see my blade slipped off and stabbed the wood, so more putty. All right, new board in. This is as close as I can get it. I'm not too thrilled about that, but again, we're just going to use some putty and do the best we can. Now these two boards are they're tight together now, but once it's on the road, it could break loose there. So I'm going to put this piece of wood behind the joint and then put a screw on either side to keep it from breaking apart when we put putty in there and paint. All right, just to finish up this wall, I took the wall as high as I could without hitting an angle. I took the ceiling as long as I could without hitting an angle. Down here there's a space, but the end of the upper cabinet will cover that, so I don't have to worry about that. And then it was just a matter of figuring out a piece for this gap here, and so I just took a piece of shiplap, and just started, you know, cutting it down to size and doing different miters on the edge. And I ended up with a 45, which, you know, I can rest it in that groove right there, and it touches at the top. Touches down here, even though there's a gap at the back, but you don't see that. And then it also, you know, finishes it off nice up here. Now I could lift it up and try to get a shiplap gap right there, and it still touches at the top. And I'm going to attach this just with some pin nails or some brad nails, and then that'll be the end of that. Let's see what happens when I fire one in this really strange connection. Pretty nice. This thing is so worth it. And I have a screw stuck to my phone. All right, after consulting with the client, we're gonna put the toilet over here. We think it's gonna give us more room to operate the toilet with no other wall here. We'll have all the space above the heater and with the seat back. But I did run my wire to power the toilet, or at least charge the battery, so I'm gonna have to fish that back over. I'll either pop out that board or I'll take out that outlet, pull the wire, and then use a wire fish to get it down there through the hole. Oh no, I'm flushing the toilet. See, my electrical shop is now temporarily a cabinet shop. I'm putting together these boxes for this Promaster. Over here I have the toilet box set up, making sure it's square, glued and screwed. And remember, the lid is lifting up here and the front is going to be pulling off, so I don't really have any way to have a cross member. I may have one along the bottom, but I have to test fit it with the toilet to see if that's going to work. But for now I have this just nailed at the top, keeping it square until the glue dries, and then I'll take it into the van for a test fit. While my bench is dry inside, I'm working on my uppers, and so I want to determine, because what I'm doing is copying the profile of this, I want to make sure that the front of my upper is perpendicular to the floor. And so I have some things to work with here in this build, which is this closet. And so I was able to take my big T-square here and hold it up, resting on the floor, and measure, you know, all along here. And it's exactly perpendicular to the floor. So whoever did that, good job. And then I took my large framing square here and I clamped it and figured out exactly where 12 inches down and 12 inches out is, because that's very similar to what these cabinets are here. And then I was able to take a smaller framing square, hold that there, mark my line, and now I can see sort of what the profile of my upper cabinet is going to be. But now I want to template this. And the way that I do that is by using strips. You could use wood, you could use corrugated plastic. This is just some cardboard I ripped in the table saw. And then I'm borrowing my daughter's cordless glue gun. And don't tell her, because she absolutely would care. And I'm gonna hold this up here, and then I'm gonna glue that to the wall, just, you know, temporarily. A piece there, glue them together, and then a third piece. And then I'm gonna create a little template. I could even probably do the whole thing out of cardboard. But making a very flimsy, fragile, and temporary template that I will then trace onto a piece of wood. All right, so the glue gun was dead, so I'm using some double-sided sticky tape. This is kind of like a spec tape, although this is by X-Fasten. It's really nice for a lot of different things. I even use it to hold down routing jigs when I'm routing. But in any case, I'm gonna stick that right there on the double-sided sticky tape. I'm gonna make sure that stays out over there, and then I'm gonna do a strip here and here. All right, there's my rough template. So I'm going to pull this down and transcribe it to a piece of 1/4 inch, and then we'll come back and test it. Here's our template. Ace Ventura would say, like a glove. A couple little, you know, spots that aren't really tight, but all I'm concerned about is right there and right there. And we can check our profile coming down the wall. Close enough for me. Estimating kind of where it's going to end. Close enough for me. The top, we can, I wouldn't caulk it, but the door that lifts up is really going to hide that. The bottom, we could caulk if it's real unsightly, but we won't know until we build it. So just finished up making these boxes for the little drawer bank. You can see how I built the box. I rabbited out the ends and then had the sides fit into that. And then I pin nailed it, or just brad nailed it with some glue in all four corners to make a really strong joint. And then on the bottom, what I do is I route out, I just use a table saw and notch out, cut out a little channel for the bottom. I use 1/4 inch, everything else is 1/2 inch. Slide it all the way in, and then I just screw it to the back piece there, and it makes a really nice lightweight drawer. I did make them a little too small width-wise, and so I needed to shim this part of the slide with a little washer to get it to fit right. I usually take the hinge or the slide, which are about 1/2 inch, so I, add 1 inch, and then I take 1/8, but this time 1/8 was too much, so I had to do a little shimming. But yeah, once the drawer banks are in, I can put my faces on, add handles, and then install this. All right, 99% finished here on this remodel. You can see we've added our upper cabinets. We have our 2 benches, our tabletop. I haven't done any updates throughout the painting process, but everything got a coat of Kills primer. And then I have 2 coats of this Sherwin-Williams, it's actually door and trim paint, but I really liked it. Went on smooth, it seems durable. And I used a 4-inch foam roller for everything. And I really like the technique that I've developed for painting. As much as I hate painting, I think it turned out pretty good. So over here we have our toilet box lid that lifts up with the piano hinge, making sure it's not hitting the tabletop. There's a little swoop cut out here so that you can grab it. A little bit of ventilation. Maybe you don't want that in a toilet, but also a place for your legs to go when you're sitting on the toilet. You can pop this front off if you need to take the toilet out, or if you, I don't know, feel more comfortable sitting on it that way. I use these little camping latches over here. Next to it is our Webasto and our Webasto box. I made this custom little oddly shaped box, the removable lid. Now the heater actually sits on the factory floor, and then whoever built this van built the subfloor around it. And so the exit of the heater is very close to the top of the finished floor. So I was able to use an old like 3-inch S-bar vent that I had in my shop. And then I had to get creative with like a tube of, I used Reflectix and some metallic like HVAC tape to get, to get the little slant up from the heater to the vent. I think it's going to be fine. Added some space around the heater. It's not a whole lot, but I do have these inlet holes at the back here so that when the heater is running, it's pulling cool air from back there and blowing it out the front. Around all of these boxes, these benches and these heater boxes, is the floor. And now most of this was here before. It's like some life-proof, tongue and groove, click together or snap together flooring. The client gave me some extra, which I was able to stretch and fill this space here, but it meant I had to use some pieces that were just small. And so there's some gaps here and there, but I think it's going to be fine. The client's okay with it, and they can put a rug over it or something like that. They're not looking at the floor, they're looking at the beautiful remodel. Over here, my drawers turned out really nice. The original hardware and drawer slides still usable. One thing I don't like is that the faces are different sizes. I tried to figure that out ahead of time, but that's one place that I wasn't able to get that. I also had to cut off about 3/4 of an inch on this bottom drawer to get it above the finished floor here. It still rubs all the way out here, but that's as much as I was willing to cut. I think it's going to be fine. And again, this is just plywood. I didn't really do a whole lot of, I didn't do any edge banding. I did some puttying, but there's still some void showing, but it matches the rest of the build, and that's okay. It's okay with me. Upper cabinets, I did have to use some drawer struts or door struts because the hinges, even though they are hidden frameless hinges like the other ones, they aren't able to hold this lid up. Here's our recessed light. Have a cover that I routed out the bottom. Our wires can stick out and any excess heat buildup can kind of come out the back. Simple way to just make that usable. Dimmer, that was already here, but it was a dimmer and switch for the shower. Tabletop, this is about 24 by 24 inches. It's an old piece of wood. I think it actually came from the bridge of the bed platform back here, but clients wanted me to repurpose this, put a little 1/8 inch round over on it to make it soft for when you bump into it, and then built a wood support and used some aluminum angle back there to hold it against the wall. Feels pretty strong. Anyway, I really like how this came out. I don't usually do this sort of thing, but I really like the idea of this project, and it makes a great video. Phoenix Off-Grid Solutions, off-grid power systems, heating, air conditioning, and plumbing systems. I also do full build consultations for folks that are building out their van and want a professional to help them through the process.